Hi there. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Jonathan Westerling, Manager of Special Programs for Google's SAS team. Today, I'm joined for the first time for one of these sessions by a guest, and not just one guest, but two guests. We're going to be focusing today on Part 90 operators who are migrating over to CBRS. And here's what we have on our agenda. We're going to begin with an overview of the Part 90 migration, the steps that are involved, and what approach you should take. And we'll talk about our recommendations for how to best do this migration so that you can learn from the things that we've learned here at Google over the last several months of doing these migrations. Then we will do a live demo with one of the tools that Google has developed to help you with the migration from Part 90. And we have a second special guest to help us talk about their experience, their actual experience as a customer doing the migration. More about that special guest in just a moment. We will have time at the end for a Q&A. So be sure to send those questions to us. The best way to send those is on the chat here on this video channel. If you've never used chat on YouTube, on your first try, you might see a message asking you to create a channel. Don't worry about that. It's just asking you to set up a YouTube identity. It shouldn't ask you for anything more than your name. Also, please remember that there is a 30-second delay in the broadcast. So if you're posting questions on the chat, as we get into the Q&A portion, it might take a few minutes for the answer to actually get back to you. So appreciate your understanding about that. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce our guest. And this is Martin Jensen. Martin recently joined us as a consultant for the Google Wireless team. And before that, over the past 5 years, he's been heavily engaged in designing, building, and supporting WISPs and private wireless networks. Prior to that, he spent 17 years with a large telecom OEM vendor, and 7 years before that with a telecom network infrastructure and neutral host providers. Martin joins us live from Atlanta, but is originally from Denmark, which, as you might know, is a very small country. As such, it's important for one to speak the languages of the very nearby countries around you, which is why he actually speaks 8 languages. We've asked that he do his presentation today in English. Martin, thank you so much for joining us, and please take us into the world of Part 90 to Part 96 migrations.
Thank you very much, Jonathan, and happy to be here, and thanks for the warm welcome. Yes, I'm just going to conduct this in English, and maybe 8 is a bit of saturation, but definitely learned 8 languages in my past. So thank you for that. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the transition from Part 90, as it's called, to Part 96, or also called CBRS. Some of the experiences that we gathered over the past couple of months working with a number of WISPs, and we wanted to share some of these experiences and some of these practices that's being used, so to help stimulate and maybe help some learnings that we gathered along the way for everyone who's about to venture into this journey. So without further ado, I'm going to flip on to the next slide. There we go. So the first thing is that you have to take into consideration is what is CBRS? What is it that you're about to endeavor into this journey of transitioning your network from where it is today on Part 90 to Part 96? And it is for many, it is a journey. That's what we heard from WISPs. There is a journey that involves a shared spectrum, whereas before you're dedicated in your own spectrum, but it is a shared spectrum. You're sharing it with incumbents and later on PAL that have priority to access to the band. The good portion is obviously it's at the end of it, you got access to a lot more spectrum that you have as a Part 90 operator, and it offers you the opportunity to serve more of your customers and also offer higher speeds to your customers. So that's obviously the end goal of the journey. In between, you have the SAS, the Spectrum Access System, that you need to include as part of your network plan. So this is what to expect as part of your journey. As part of this journey, and as part of working with the WISPs, we have we sort of found out that the best approach, or one of the best approach to this, is to divide the phases, or the activities, up into 4 distinct phases. And that is easier just so that because it can seem like a very daunting task of basically migrating and changing your entire network out from what it is right now to a new frequency band with a lot of different activities. So 4 different distinct steps can help you divide sort of this daunting task up into smaller chunks. The migration deadline obviously is out there, October 17th. It's very close, and I know a lot of people and WISPs are nervous about this date coming out there. But dividing this upcoming work into these 4 phases will definitely sort of help with the migration step. The first part is the planning portion. It's very important to conduct the proper planning. We're going to go into each of these different phases later on, but making sure that all the input into your first part of the migration, getting all those parameters right, making sure you understand your network, making sure you understand where you're going, is just super important. The next one is anything that you have discovered and any plans that you have during your planning phase. That needs to be obviously executed and prepared and planned to be implemented. The next phase is the test and communicate. So once you got your network defined, once you got your plans in place, you want to try that out and do a migration on a portion of your network to make sure that all your processes are in place. Make sure you have your communication to the different constituents in place, so your customer care and so on and so forth. And we're going to go into more detail later on. And then, of course, the last phase is executed on the entire network. And there's different approaches to how that can be accomplished, and we're going to talk about some of them. So the phase number 5 is once that's all done, you take a deep breath and then figure out what are you going to do with this incremental spectrum. We call it the optimize and expand. Now you have the liberty of using a wider spectrum band, and obviously you want to use that to serve more customers and provide more capacity, and also expand your network, your footprint, and your existing customer base. So we have some tools I'm going to share with you at the end. But the first part about the planning, it's always the start that requires the greatest effort. Be prepared that the planning effort in the very beginning, it's not something to take lightly. That is probably the greatest effort of all of these different phases as you venture into the migration effort. It has caught a lot of the WISP we worked with in the past with a little bit of a surprise that there's that much work involved in it. So start that as early as you can to sort of help with the subsequent phases. So, which in the first one is the planning phase. So there's sort of 5 main points with the planning phase. Sign up with the SAS, make sure that you have all the paperwork in place, you have your logins and so on and so forth, is obviously the first step. Step number 2 is gather your network information and equipment information. There is installation data. There is a bunch of data that you need for introducing this into your SAS. And then another thing that we're going to show that later on with a little demonstration is once you gather all that network, map it out on a network planner. That's a tool that we offer. Use that to basically look at your input before you start signing it up with the Spectrum Access server. And then obviously on your team, you need to have installers, certified professional installers that is allowed to define your CPI and CPSD parameter in the SAS portal. And then check your Part 90 license status. Some of these are still active at the FCC. And it's also important to see what are they currently blocking my upper 50 part of the band where you're serving your customers at the moment. So there's this way you can check it, and also we have some links to how you can relinquish those existing Part 90 licenses so that you can properly migrate your existing sites from Part 90 over to CBRS using the same frequency band. Some links have been included in this deck that will be shared later on is for your use. There's the SAS sign up that we mentioned in step 1. how to sign up for the Google SAS. It's listed as the first one. The next two links are related to the Part 90 license. The middle one is the how you check your Part 90 license. Is it still active at the FCC? Does it still block my spectrum, the upper part of the spectrum where you're serving your customers? You can check that here. And then the last slide, or the last link, is the method of which to cancel your Part 90 license or licenses if it's currently active. We have worked with some of our WISPs and Hudson Valley that Matt represents is one of them, how to cancel these licenses, exploring how fast it goes. It typically goes relatively fast, but then also that cancellation of that license needs to be percolated to all of the various SAS. So it can take some time for licenses to be retracted from the FCC. So some useful links there as well for your use. One of the other things about the mapping and evaluation, and I hope Matt agrees with my points here, mapping out your network where it is very important. There's always little gotchas that you have in your network that you can't see in a large spreadsheet or you can't see in a vendor portal. And just mapping it out is just a good approach for how to approach these and verify that the network data that you have prior to configuring it in the SAS portal is a good thing. Obviously, Network Planner gives you many other options, and I think Matt is going to show that some of that later on for doing propagations and assessing other things as part of your network. So this is not just for the purpose of migration, but use this as an opportunity to get a very good idea of how your network is and utilize the tools that Google gives at your disposal. I'm going to show a little bit of a demonstration here next, so apologies for flipping through some of these slides here, but just to show you sort of the ease of which you can use the tool. So what I have here is a network inventory that we have collected as a demonstration of a network inventory from just a demo network that we have created. Has all of these different tabs. These tabs are something, or these columns contains information that is needed in this as part of the input to the SAS. Obviously, these same input can go into your network planner to create network plans, to create propagation, to see how your signals propagate, etc. And this is all part of the information that you need to gather as part of your planning phase. Obviously, you can get this information sometimes from your network provider, from management systems, and you might have other systems that you can use. This is just a simple sheet that we create that contains the important information and the necessary information to be used for both the import into Network Planner as well as into the SAS. You can see this is the input. This sheet has the input. The other two sheets that we have here is the Network Planner input that you can use to import the sites and the CBSDs into the network planning platform. So basically, this first sheet here feeds into Network Planner input sheet and also the SAS input sheets that we'll be using for some of the next phases. So what we have done here is you can click to the Network Planner input sheet, and here we have about a demonstration network for a little more than 1,000 CBSDs. Where you click File, you click Download, and you click Common Separated File, and that will create a common separated file. And while that is creating, I will drag this over to the side, and I have Network Planner here on the right-hand side to show you this is a blank input. And what I can do here next is I can take this Network Planner input, I can drag it over here to see how the network is. Oftentimes, many times, I would say not always, but oftentimes, the input file will contain some errors that you need to correct, obviously, before you import it into the SAS server. So a typical, we introduced some errors here that that's very common. Is one, for example, we have this little more than 1,000 CBSD here somewhere in the southeast, and we all of a sudden notice that we have a CP that's located somewhere in Asia. That's obviously a mistake of some sort that we need to correct before we proceed with the input into the SAS. So simply by clicking this CP over here, we can see, well, there was a minus missing, and this is a common little gotcha that we got to fix. So we just put in a minus here, and that will place it back into where it belongs. So the other common thing is, let's take a look at the network that the network that you have, and this is just a demonstrated demo network somewhere around the panhandle of Florida. And if you scroll in here, another common thing that you should look for is, for example, look at all your CPEs, make sure they're pointing in the right direction. You can quickly, by mapping this out, you can quickly see, obviously there's a CPE that is not pointing in the right direction. It is as simple as it's pointing in the 180 degrees off center. So simply looking at the network and correcting these common errors is a good practice. What we will do here is, this is clearly 180 degrees off, so we'll just change the azimuth, and now it's pointing in the right direction. And then make your changes in your radio network sheet here, because that will feed the other sheet that we use, which is the SAS input sheet. This is an example when we will do the exact same thing when we are importing these CBSDs into the SAS portal, because the same data is being used. So just a little way you can use a simple spreadsheet and the network planner that we provide for your use. And I'm going to flip back to the slides here. So that was the planning, and it's always a good exercise to conduct some of these. The other thing we do, and this planning of your spectrum can be done at any part of your migration journey. It is checking your spectrum available, the SAS portal overlays, the top 50, as we mentioned before, will be blocked if you're using a part 90 today and it's not relinquished. So make sure you relinquish those early using the links that we shared other. And there might also be other incumbents in the area that you can see these incumbents and the available spectrum either in the network planner or in the SAS portal. And I've put an example here of, you click a certain location in the SAS portal, and with some of these new features that we have introduced, coexistence, you will also see certain things such as channel quality. What we do is we do a prediction frequently, and then we create a channel quality. So it's not just the spectrum availability and the power each of your CBSD can be granted, but also the channel quality. So once you are completed, either during this process or once you're completed with it, you can start to look at what's my available spectrum, but also what is the channel quality that can be provided for each of these different CBSDs that you have. And just contact the Google SAS support, and we can help you set up with this incremental information. The next part that will be probably part of the later phases is to define interference coordination groups and channel groups. These will help the Google SAS to create a better channel plan for your network that can be reviewed and potentially implemented in the future, because we can see from the SAS perspective all of the CBSDs, not just your own, but everybody else's CBSD in the surrounding area, and use that information and use our propagation models and clutter statistics and clutter data to create an optimized frequency plan that fits your particular network. And what you will see in the SAS portal, you will see these two new parameters. The channel group is a group of CBSD that needs to use the same frequency. So think about this as your link between your base station and your CPE. That will help the SAS to understand, although these particular base station sectors and CBSD needs to be in the same frequency. The same thing with interference group. Define a group of CBSDs that do not interfere with each other. So those are the two new parameters that's in the coax new feature and functionality. And we do have some sessions on our onboarding that we have reviewed this in the past, and we'll have some in the future as well. And at the end, we can create a frequency report for your review that says, here's what you're using today in your network. When you have everything connected to the SAS, here's what you're currently using. But we can recommend, based on the propagation methods that we have, to look at some of the other channels that's available, and perhaps you move those to a channel that perhaps may be more clean based on everything else that we can see in the SAS. So part of your planning spectrum, you can start to look at some of these features and functionalities inside the Google SAS that will get you some of that insight, and we can help you create some of those channel reports. The next step is, once you've done all of your planning and preparation, collecting all this network information, you need to go and be familiar with the SAS portal. There's a new interface. There's some new things you need to look at in there. Make sure you're familiar with it, and specifically your CPIs, make familiar with the portal. What are the input? Where does the input sit on the portal so that you're familiar with it? The network plan might have given you information about where your CPs might not be compliant, where they might need a firmware update, where the base station might need a software upgrade. You might have some network connectivity changes that's needed in your network as part of the discovery that you've done during the network planning portion. So there will be network updates that may be required. Then decide your migration strategy, and it all depends on the type of network you have, the vendors that you're using, et cetera, et cetera. And we've seen 4 main migration strategies conducted by WISPs. One is a simple site-by-site. You migrate one site at a time with the associated CPs, and that's how you execute it little by little. There's also another approach, which is an entire cluster of sites. So do a cluster by cluster. Some WISPs has multiple vendors in their network, so you could do a vendor by vendor migration. And then other ones decide, let's just get it over with and do a network flashcut. So decide what your best migration is and what fits best for your particular network. The KPI reporting is also important. Determine, once you do the migration, what are the KPIs that you're looking for to assess the migration was successful. Determine the way you collect your methods. Is it through your management platform that your vendor provides? Do you use some other techniques or tools that's available? But make sure that once you're doing the migration, you know exactly, here are the performance, here's the metrics, here's how I'm going to extract them, and here's what I'm going to be looking for. If it's possible, also collect historical trends so you can see if things are not just on and off, but actually trending in the right direction or the same direction. We don't want it to trend in the wrong direction. Also collect a parameter audit of your network. So once you change your network and once you go through these updates, make sure you have a parameter audit conducted before you do any changes so that you can always verify that what has changed from a parameter perspective. So these are just some good practices that we've seen from some of the past migrations. I mentioned before, we don't have time for this time, but the same way that we just approached importing sites and CBSDs into the network planner, the same spreadsheet can be used for importing all your sites and your CBSDs into the SAS portal. It works exactly the same way. It can be done through this sheet, or perhaps your vendor provides that capability as part of the management portal. It can be done, you can import them here, and depending on the type of vendor you have, some of these CBSD can also pre-register into the SAS portal. But do this import as part of your preparation phase as well. And then the third part is the test and the communicate. So we do suggest that you do not you do a little test first on a selected area before you do your mass migration or your flashcut migration. So select an area that's easy to access, select an area that you can have full control over, create a mob that fits your specific need with, here are the step-by-step process, and also as part of that mob, create a backup process. So in case something fails, you have an approach to go back. You don't have to sit and figure it out as you go. Make sure all of the people that are involved knows about this, what's going on. Make sure you have a communication plan, because all of these things you will need to use those as part of your main migration activity. So test your communication path as well. Execute it, your execution. Make sure that everything goes well, and then evaluate and optimize your method of procedure and everything that you have done in the past, so that once you go to the next phase, you have done this before. You know what's entailed, and you've fixed any kinks that might have occurred during this test and communicate phase. And then, of course, the last one is hopefully everything went well. You collected all the data. As part of the big migration, you're setting up your baseline. You know where you are when you start. You execute the migration mob, and typically what we've seen, this migration has been conducted at nighttime during the maintenance window. That's where they'll be executed. You evaluate immediately after the execution of the migration that everything is functioning, everything is working. And then a couple of days later, you will verify the performance. You will verify that nothing has degraded before you go on to either the next step or before you declare you're complete with the migration. I will talk a little bit about the optimization of this spectrum afterwards, and the report I mentioned earlier on that we generate. We use the data that we have available in Network Planner, the Google geodata that we have access to create these prediction models and understand where the radio signals are transmitting, so that we can determine what are the best planned frequency use for your network. And then we have a propagation engine that we apply this to on top of the geodata, together with the CBS details. And here it's important that we obviously from all the SASs can see not just your CBSDs, but we can also see the incumbents. We can see any other CBSD that might be in the area, and using all of this data to create a propagation and create a frequency plan that fits your specific network and your specific CBSDs. We obviously, the more information the SAS has about your network, and we talked about the CCG and the ICG, if you have that information available and populated to the SAS will use this information to say, well, this CBSD belongs to this base station sector. So that's the approach of the Google SAS optimization's usage of the CBRS spectrum. Just a quick snapshot here, and we'll have additional sessions on this. The sample report from Google will look similar to this. So once you have done your migration, we can report out on this is the channel usage that you have currently for all your sites and all your CPEs and all your base station sectors. And running these algorithms, we can see these particular channels for these sites might be better to use in your scenario. So we create this report for you that can give you such a report, and you can decide if this makes sense. You might have some issues, or you might have some specific network details that the SAS obviously don't know about, that you said this makes sense here, this doesn't make sense there. But this is a report that we can generate to take better usage of the incremental spectrum that you have. So this was my part of the presentation, and over to Matt.
Thank you, Martin. That is a lot of information, and really appreciate your diving into that for us. We do want to invite people to ask any other questions in the chat if they have them, if questions have come up, and we're going to have a Q&A session after Matt has talked a little bit about his experience. Some folks in the chat have asked if all the information that you just gave, Martin, is going to be available afterwards. Indeed, it will. As soon as we're done here broadcasting it live, we will be replaying this. You'll click on the same link, the same YouTube link, and you'll be able to rewatch this presentation. For those of you who may have joined us late, Paul, not a problem. You'll be able to go and watch the replay. And Ross, we will send documentation to anyone who registered. Feel free to reach out to us about that, or maybe just rewatch the presentation if you want to grab some of the information from those slides. Others, if you have questions, you can post them in the chat while we're listening to our next guest. And I want to bring in Matt Guzzo. He is the Network Operations Manager for Hudson Valley Wireless in New York State. And Matt is a second-generation employee of a company originally based around two-way radios and phone systems. In 2002, they created a small WISP with their existing tower locations to solve their internal internet needs, and then began to serve rural houses. And today, Matt manages a fixed network of over 3,500 square miles. Hudson Valley is one of our earliest customers. We've really enjoyed working with them. We need to leave a little bit of time for the Q&A at the end, Matt, but we've got about 10 minutes where you can hopefully share a little bit about what you've learned along the way migrating to CBRS with Google. Matt, take it away.
All right, yeah. We're located in the upstate New York area, in the Albany area, and we were very early adopters of the SAS under ICD. And this allowed us to experience some of the integrations with the SAS early on. Some good, some bad, but it gave us an invaluable insight to how some of these complex systems work. Accuracy is going to be the key to a successful deployment of the SAS. We are currently in the early phases of the initial SAS, and the new versions are going to be to come. It is going to be ever-evolving ecosystem between SAS, vendor, and operators. The current version of the SAS is pretty basic as far as operations. You ask for a grant, and assuming that you meet the criteria, you should get a grant and awarded the proper power for your area. With dynamic channel planning and coexistence in the near future, these channel planning and interference avoidance mechanisms will be key to success of network moving forward. These algorithms are only as good as the information fed into them. It is crucial that the information is as accurate as possible. A couple of things that we learned from our deployment in regards to antenna alignments and towers is going to be the 3Z alignment tool. 3Z alignment tool is you put it on the network dishes or the sectors, and it allows you to accurately gather the azimuth, down tilt, and take snapshots for a downloadable version in PDF for some verification. Another thing that you can do is stop at Home Depot. This tape measure right here, a cheap little tool, but it'll tell you the exact center line on your tower for accurate deployments on towers. Put a weight at the bottom when you're dropping it down, and it works really well. Know your vendor equipment, antenna patterns. If you don't know what your antenna pattern looks like, ask your vendor. But some of these antennas have built-in down tilt, and it is very important when you're filling out the CBSD information that you have the accurate down tilt information in this. From the UE side, get your installers a good compass. Some UE and SM vendors have built-in tools for their deployment in some apps. Some have proprietary tools. If you don't have an app or a tool, we need to pressure the vendors to give us an alignment tool that is easy to upload the data into the SAS to help our installers. This tool should allow the installer to upload the latitude, the longitude, the height, and any other CBSD information that is required to achieve a grant. Things that keep me up as night as an operator. Giving over complete trust over to the SAS, watching it make decisions about my network is extremely tough for us operators. Unfortunately, we have to do this, and we have to do this soon. We need to get good logging from our vendors about the states of our CBSDs. We need to know about we don't need to know about every heartbeat that happens, but if change happens in the state of a grant, a DPA move, or adjustment of power, or some event that results in the suspension of a grant or a major, this is inexcusable to not be notified about this. Know your zone. Is there a GWPZ in your area? Well, Hudson Valley Wireless was originally a grandfather of Ubiquity and Cambium deployments. Turns out we ended up shooting ourselves in the foot, and it was blocking us from going into the upper 50 megahertz of the network. It is easier than you think to actually relinquish some of that. So Martin has provided some of the links to be able to do this. Depending on where you are in the country, there are different zones that get activated in a DPA move list. When this happens, you are told to stand down on certain frequencies, move to better frequencies. You should always have the place to go, but your vendor equipment from the eNode B or the AP should be smart enough to automatically handle the change and grant recover. If you can't if your vendors cannot do this now, they need to be having this on their roadmap in the future. If not, you will manually move, causing network outages to your customer. We as operators should expect that sustained outages are unacceptable, and that our vendors need to work together on getting some of these systems talking dynamically with the SAS. Find out if you have any ESCs in your area. You can do this by the network planning tool from Google. If you haven't already, please check it out. There's a lot of information on it regarding your environment and how the expected behavior will be with the SAS. There's some reasons why we have been really impressed with working with the team at Google. They have heard some of our cries and be happy for help. These, excuse me. they need to tell you the best channel for operations and interference. With that, I'm all set, Martin. Thank you.
Okay.
Totally fine. Matt, sometimes these things happen in this day and age, and we hope you can stick around, Matt, for some Q&A. If people have questions about your experience, what you
yes, absolutely.
some of the things that you might have gotten into there. If people have real world questions for you, you've been in the trenches here for many months, and maybe you have some words of wisdom. The first question, though, I think is going to be for Martin, and if others of you in the audience there have questions, you can pop them into the YouTube chat over there, and we will go through them as they come in. Casper Faust, thank you for joining us this morning. Casper asks, if I have devices that are non-CBRS compliant, as well as CBRS related devices on the same cell, and I want to start using a SAS, but I do not have any PALs, what will happen to my non-CBRS related devices? So Martin, what about Part 90 devices during and then after that the migration to CBRS?
So you're asking about non-Part 96 compliant CBRS?
Yeah, devices that are not compliant with Part 96.
Yeah, so we've seen a mix, and working with all the WISP, we've seen a mixed bag of behaviors in the network. Obviously, it's best if you can follow the process, if you will, the 4-step process we mentioned of planning and set up and prepare, and then replace whatever you have in the field that might not be Part 96 compliant. But we have come across a couple of instances in the past where that was just not achievable, and the desire to move to the CBRS spectrum, the wider band, was just a necessity to meet the demand and the capacity needs of this particular WISPs that we worked with. And in some of the cases, they were even willing to forego the chance that the Part 90 only compliant CPE was not available to take this, but it all depends on your CPE vendor. So I will recommend that you do a test, and you can do that as part of step 4 of test and prepare. But in some instances, you have the CPE will be looking for the actual frequency and not the EARFCN that dictates if it's a CBRS channel Part 96 band 48, or if it's a Part 90 channel. So some CPEs, and obviously we can't test everybody, that's all the CPEs that's out there, but some CPEs, when you migrate your base station and your associated CPEs to Part 96, there might be some stranglers out there that you are not able to handle. Some of them will connect to a Part 90, Part 96 channel, and there might be some that don't. Unfortunately, we don't have tested. We haven't tested all the CPEs. We haven't come across all of them, but it all depends on your network. But the best recommendation we can get is make sure that you do an inventory of everything you have and replace it as soon as you can, so that you don't run into any potential issues when you do the migration.
Thank you, Martin. That's great. There's going to be a lot of folks who do have, there's so many various devices out there, and so I think that will be something that we can also help folks with is making the best use as possible with those devices. But some of them, just the manufacturers won't be making those devices available on CBRS, and when their licenses expire, that is that. Also want to acknowledge what you said, Matt. Very probably a sort of a heartfelt, honest response in terms of turning over frequency control and licensing to the SAS. There's that is definitely a new sort of environment that we're in here with CBRS, but it is something that we're sensitive to at Google, and we've got some new features, notifications, grant history, and we're continuing to integrate with device vendors in terms of improving their performance and integration with the SAS. So there's a lot of things that we're doing at Google, and we're sensitive to that. but it's a great point. This is a very different sort of environment from what you've been used to. The good news is there are a lot of upsides. We're protecting constantly, protection from interference. You've got a whole slew of new spectrum to use. So there's some positive things as well there. And so appreciate you bringing that up, Matt. And we're definitely sensitive to that and working to make that hopefully not keep you up so much at night. Paul Hemmerling asks, what KPIs are best to take note of when benchmarking prior to the upgrade? Martin, probably a question for you, although Matt, you may have some things that you've experienced, but what are the KPIs that you found the most important to benchmark?
Yeah, it all depends on the WISPs and what you're mostly interested in. The four KPIs we have come across that sort of WISP used as part of their migration strategy. We're sort of seeing that as part of working with the WISPs. The first and most obvious one is after the migration is the link up. So that's the first one. But the other ones that we're finding that's interesting and very important, and it's important if it's at all possible. And some of the vendors provide this historical view of the performance, but the ones that are in particular interesting as part of this is three more sort of, is it up and down, more interesting parameters is what's your RSRP level, what's your received power level after the migration. Is it better? Is it worse? Is it the same? The other one is the SINR or the RSRQ, so the interference levels. What do they look like afterwards? Make sure that there's no change in frequencies or you're not on the wrong channel. So check those, because if there's a change, then that will show up in one of those two metrics. The other one, the third one, or the fourth one, if you will, is the TX power. What is your TX power before? Is it trending? Was it at one level before the migration, and is it at another one afterwards? So if we could create a wish list from the device manufacturers and somewhere where we can collect historical data, those are the four KPIs sort of we would like to see. So up and down, is the signal strength the same? Is the signal quality the same? And is it trending in the right direction? So those are some of the things we heard from WISPs, that's really what they want to see in the ideal world. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not always available, and the best one that's available is it up or down. But can you extract that information as part of the KPIs? That would be awesome.
Matt,
I would say also speed tests too.
Go ahead.
I would say also just do speed tests, just the raw data through there. You'll see an improvement with a cleaner noise floor.
True. Really appreciate everyone for tuning in. Feel free to share this link and share it with other folks who are doing this Part 96 to Part 90 migration. If you have questions, you can send those in via email to our team. We want to help you with this migration. If it's something that we can help with, reach out to us. Let us know how we can help with your Part 90 to Part 96 migration through any of the tools that Martin demonstrated, plus the ones that I show in my live demos as well. We can all do that to help out. So on the chat there, we've also just posted that there's a $100 discount for the CPI training for WISPA members as well. So hopefully that helps those of you out as well who are working through this migration. And I'll flip very quickly back and just say, Martin, thank you very much for joining us, and appreciate your time today for helping us through this migration. Also, Matt, thank you very much for being here and being part of this webinar today. We're going to show this on the replay as well, and get the word out so that folks can learn from the lessons that you have had to share, and also probably we'll see a run on Amazon on those those awesome tape measures that you mentioned. That's the Christmas gift for this year for sure. So thanks very much for being here today, and I appreciate that. Everyone, thanks again for joining us and for being interested in Google SAS. Reach out to us if there's anything that we can do. Also, we'll post the link to how you can reach out to us and sign up. There's a sign up form online if you want to actually jump on board and have Google SAS help you with your CBRS journey. So thanks for that. Hope this was informative, and welcome you to join our other join our other webinars and resources that we have for you here at Google. And for now, Jonathan Westerling, thanks again for being here, and have a great week, everybody.